because we found that at that time in the U.S., back in the late 80s, early 90s, all the nurseries were being told by the universities to grow plants in compost also. So in those days, the potting soil is made out of ground up trees, composted ground up trees, and the soils being used to grow plants were in the same material. And we're finding that a lot of plants that we were growing in the 60s and 70s were not able to grow on that, and the nursery stopped offering them. So we decided to start growing our own plants, and every year we've grown more and more of our own stuff. So in our nursery nowadays, it's getting close to half of the plants offered are things that we grew. Of course, we just don't have enough land and facility right now to grow everything, because you need about 3 or 4 acres to do that. So what we do is we choose the plants. Now we know with plants, some plants can tolerate the compost. We've got things like palms, pine trees, conifers like junipers and cedars, cypresses. They can tolerate it. Lilies can tolerate it. Roses can tolerate it. Bird of paradise is real famous for tolerating junk soil, and they can live in that. But there's a lot of other, and things like India hawthorn, just the common stuff. Even fruit trees like pomegranates and apples, they can handle, and guavas can handle the real nasty, boggy organic soils, whereas most plants in nature would rather live in real dirt, which is pretty much sand, salt, and clay. We have a little bit of succulents. I mean, that's supposed to be the thing for most nurseries nowadays, but for us it's a sideline, and of course next year with the continuing drought it may become major.
Yeah, I saw you have a rat tail cactus over there. I'm interested in.
We do a lot of herbs, and we grow a lot of our own herbs. We buy a lot in too. Most herbs are not very sensitive to bad dirt.
What's the most common herb sold here?
Basil.
Basil.
Basil and coriander or cilantro are the top two easily. And then the vegetables.
And can you grow a lot of these lettuces in the winter here in Southern California?
Well, this is the right temperature for them.
So it's a good temp?
Underneath the tables there, that's our next year's fig trees.
Ah, so you just have them there?
And we start cuttings underneath the tables, that's the right.
And are those in your top pot mix?
No, they're in our acid mix.
Acid mix, okay.
So acid mix we use for cuttings and seeds because it's considered sterile medium. Whereas the top pot, the only thing unsterile about it is the sand.
So if you were to grow dragon fruit from cuttings, say, acid mix would maybe be better?
No, we do it in the top pot.
Okay.
Because like things like dragon fruit and plumerias, you let them heal over before you put them in. Whereas cuttings that are not healed over, yeah, they go in our acid mix.
You want them sterile. Right. Okay, that makes sense. We have some bromeliads here, epiphyllum.
We have a small shade area. We don't do much with shade plants. We do a little bit. I mean, this is one of our favorites.
That's beautiful.
Blue ginger. So we grow those. This is one plant that cannot take compost-based soil.
So it would kill it.
It would kill it. So we have to grow them ourselves. No one else dares grow those.
Put it in that sand.
And especially things like the California natives, like the ceanothus. We emailed with a professor at University of California, Berkeley, who wrote a paper, was one of the writers of a paper talking about how the reef vegetation along California highways is just failing. And he was telling me that, or in the article, they said the plants are coming to them from the wholesale growers with root rot already on the roots. So I emailed him my concerns about using recycled plant material, and he says, I concur. They should be growing all these plants in sand, not recycled plant material. And so we have to grow our own ceanothus, because if I get it from any grower, they'd be dead.
Really?
5 months in the pot, they're gone. Because their soil after 5 months has disintegrated to a sludge.
That's crazy. These look so happy and healthy here.
Yeah.
And which potting soil do you use for these?
This is top pot.
Top pot, okay.
Same with Antigoxanthus and kangaroo paws. They do not survive well on compost. Sea lavender just hates compost soil. They just are so yellow and brown tipped.
Yeah, but you see this all over on the coastline.
Right.
Just, it's
Naturally
invasive out there. And it's always growing in the sand, at least I know.
The most sensitive plant we've ever seen in compost lavenders, especially English lavender.
Really?
Yeah, you put them in any compost at all, even a tablespoon around the crown of that plant, it can rot out within a few months.
Wow.
So,
but a leaf litter would be okay, right?
On top of the ground, it's not a problem. Just can't have it in the roots.
In the roots, okay.
So we grow a lot of lavender now because we cannot find any lavender that won't rot on the shelf. If you give it some time, they just rot away in the pots. But a lot of the California natives, because they've been only in cultivation for a few decades, they haven't selected out the ones that are hardy enough to live in compost.
Okay.
So a lot of this stuff, if you put it in compost, it dies. In our soil, it's got no issues. So
it's like a big experiment. Which ones can tolerate? I like how you said tolerate the compost.
Right. Even something simple like bougainvillea. If I get bougainvillea from a grower, this is one, here in November, it's going to sleep because the soil can't handle the cold. But our bougainvilleas will bloom all the way through winter because the soil breathes well and they're more insulated from the cold. I think the pumice that is in our soil is very insulating, pumice and perlite. Plus, what we noticed too is that if they're in the compost soil, the roots are right on the side of the pot because there's an air gap around the side and they're very exposed to the cold. Whereas in our pots, the roots are in the middle, which is less exposed to the cold.
A lot more,
so
that's protecting it, insulating it.
Right.
Okay.
So they stay in bloom. Whereas
that's crazy. This is a huge a huge contrast.
Right.
So this one came from a different nursery or a wholesaler,
right.
And then these ones you grew yourself.
And they use a lot of sand, but they use compost with the sand. Whereas we have less sand than they do, but we don't put any compost in it.
Yeah, I do see some places using a lot of sand and cow manure, steer manure.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Not good.
In time, it's just going to turn to toxic?
Yeah. If if it has enough oxygen, it's okay. But anytime you lower the oxygen level by burying it, it just, one thing what we've been told by the compost people, you don't have quite enough oxygen, you create a lot of acidity.
Acidity.